Brought to you by Halver Travel.
Welcome back to our sixth episode of Raw and Refined, the Gentleman's Hour. This is where we have three men, middle aged, black males that have known each other for almost 40 years. We are sharing our experiences, our life, our knowledge with you. And these are typical conversations that we have that we thought that can help others, especially black males. We appreciate those that have been listening to our first five episodes. And for those that are new, we hope you look forward to the following episodes coming up as well. Again, please like, share, comment, and we'll keep this thing rolling. We always like to start our hour off with a toast. And this time we're going to keep it simple. We're doing a tall glass of water. There are different ways you can get that water. Mine is filtered with ice, but it is raw and refined. A toast to my brothers.
Well, mine has a little lemon in it, some lemon juice. It also has a little salt in it, and it has a little bit of organic stevia in there. So
Nice.
it's kind of like a natural Gatorade.
There you go.
Well, mine is sparkling water, and it's Waterloo, and it's tropical fruit. I've become this fan of the sparkling waters, and so this is my favorite one.
Okay. All right. Outstanding. I'm glad that we have.
Here we go.
Oh, there you go.
Nice. Check him out. Check him out showing off
Okay.
his new mic.
His new
Okay.
mic, right?
Uh-huh.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, let me just quickly introduce each of us. We have Rich. Rich is an attorney as well as the university program dean for the College of Criminal Justice. We have Greg. He is a community activist and union president. And we have myself, John. I'm a physician and physician executive. We hope that this topic today will be insightful, and we're looking forward to the different conversations that we're going to have surrounding imposter syndrome. We're going to talk about imposter syndrome today. Imposter syndrome actually appears to affect each of us, or at least about 70 to 80% of the population, which I thought was remarkable at some point in our lives. We typically think of imposter syndrome as it relates to our working environment or educational endeavors, but it can also even flow into relationships as well as how we even think of ourselves when it comes to racial identity. Definition of imposter syndrome is that it's a persistent internal feeling of self doubt or feeling like we're a fraud in what or who we are, despite all of the success that we have been able to attain as a result of what we do. This is a very common topic, so we're excited about having this conversation today, and we'll touch upon how society and cultural pressures can affect our feelings as it relates to imposter syndrome. But as we do, we are going to focus a little bit more on how this affects Black males specifically as well. We're going to talk about the five types of imposter syndrome, and we're going to try to share where we think we may fit in one of those types, or at times where or when we may have felt that we were in that imposter phenomenon. And then hopefully we'll be able to offer some ways of healing, growth, and realizing that it's okay to have the feeling, but we're going to have to understand and recognize the feeling for us to be able to grow and be better from it. So let's get started. GK, you want to explain
Yeah,
to us the five
yeah,
types?
yeah. So you've started us out well. I think as we've looked at this, there are sort of five or six sort of base types of imposter syndrome that we've uncovered, and so just quickly kind of going through those five or six. The first one, in no particular order, is the superhuman. And what this means and what it's characterized by is feelings of pressure to succeed in every domain of life. That's not just career, but that's also family and social life. This sort of superhuman type connects success to how hard they work and productivity. And folks who deal with this are often experiencing burnout or overworking, just trying to meet the impossible expectations. Thus, the superhuman. Sort of the second type that's been identified is the person who believes that asking for help is a weakness, may struggle to delegate or collaborate with others, suffers silently with a feeling of being overwhelmed.
Don't you know
So,
that I'm a soloist?
Rakim. So that's sort of the second type of imposter syndrome. The third one, if you will, is referred to as the expert. And that's the person who's always seeking more knowledge or training to feel quote unquote qualified. And that this person feels like a fraud unless they know everything about everything. And often hesitates to speak up in meetings or in conversations or take action without the perfect preparation. Again, that's the expert, what we're calling the third type. And then there is the natural genius who believes that success should just be effortless and that it should just come naturally. But this person struggles a lot when things don't come easily and that it isn't effortless and interprets difficulty as a type of failure. Again, this is the expert type. And then we have the perfectionist who sets unrealistically high standards and focuses on flaws and not wins and really never feels satisfied with their performance and avoid celebrating achievements due to constant self critique. And so that's kind of the last of those, that group of types of imposter syndrome that we've sort of identified. But I think, John, you also have discovered another type.
Yeah, what we've know, and I believe this actually would incorporate all of those five types within a, we'll say, subcategory of imposter syndrome, and that's racial imposter syndrome. And how that's defined is that it is where people who may identify with a certain race or culture may not feel a part of that race or culture. They can't identify with what society may say, hey, you're a black male. Why aren't you acting like a black male? And therefore, or you may hear the conversation, why you always sounding white? What's that about? You don't identify with your culture and everything. You don't listen to rap. You don't listen to hip hop. Who are you type deal? And that can cause people to feel like, man, am I black? Or is there something wrong with me as to why I'm not doing this, that, or the other? So those are some things that can impact us specifically as well. And it can be in all races and cultures as it relates to that. So I'm sure we'll get a little bit more into that as we go on with our conversation.
Yeah, I imagine even questions around sexual orientation can be viewed through this lens as well.
I'd have to agree with you, Greg, on that as well.
This is cool. This list is it's interesting, that I can at different points in my life I could see different of these, types, playing out in some ways in my life. I think when I was in college, definitely there was some of this perfectionist thing. You would think, I'm sure Greg and John looked at this list and said, well, of course he picked the natural genius. And I was like, no, because because Greg is
No
always
doubt.
talking. But as you look at the things that were tied to it, the characteristics, believes success should be effortless, struggles deeply when things don't come easily, internalizes difficulty as failure. Those aren't things that I've ever done, and so my belief in my genius is different from being the natural genius in this context. I think the superhuman at some points definitely, but at other points the perfectionist, setting the unrealistically high standards, focusing on flaws, not wins. I've definitely at different points along the way have done that. Never the expert. I've witnessed that, seeing people who have been like that, that kind of that frozen in place, scared to do, because I don't know if I know enough. You know 1,000% more than me on this subject, just spending 5 minutes with you, so you should be able to pull the trigger and make that decision. But you know so it's really interesting to see it play out in real life, and to see how easy it is for people to get caught up in these feelings, and how much they can let it control themselves, and how it can lead to, so much of what we end up talking about, unfortunately, ends up, talking about the potential damages that we can do to ourselves living life. But that's just the reality, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about, is things to avoid it, because that stress, the burnout, hiding struggles are all things that, superhumans do to themselves when they try to do it all, when they try to take on all the pressure, when they try to be the one for the family. I'm going to be, being the matriarch, being the patriarch, being the whoever for everybody is draining of one's energy, without a doubt. So it's easy to fall victim of your own, I guess, internal struggles trying to deal with this, being the superhuman or being the perfectionist.
No, I agree with you on that, Rich. I think that with most of us, and this is probably why it's seen in about 70 to 80% of the population, is that when we're starting off in our careers, you have a feeling of, do I know enough, to be able to be a part of the conversation with folks who we identify as they've been here for a long time. What am I, what do I know? How can I say this? And they might shoot me down and think of me as, why did we hire you type deal, and why did you say that? So I can definitely say, earlier in my career, and actually as I'm having this conversation, I'm also thinking about it even early as joining the fraternity. And that may be something, we can touch upon as it relates to that too, as to your knowledge and being able to feel comfortable, speaking up with the big brothers in the room type deal about topics and situations. But as a physician, yeah, one thing I've experienced is I fit into that soloist aspect, and maybe even some of that expert aspect as well. I don't know if part of that's related to being an only child coming up and just, feeling like, hey, I have to be the best. I have to know what's going on in any situation, especially before I can feel comfortable speaking on any situation, because again, not wanting to be seen as less than. And then usually I'm the only one, or a few of color that's in the room, especially in the role as a physician executive, where you have to feel like, well, wait a minute. I wonder, if I say this, are they going to look at me like, what are you talking about? Where did that come from type deal, versus knowing and recognizing that I have that background, I have that education, I have that experience, and what I share is valid. And that's the point that we'll get to as we continue to have this conversation, is that we have to get beyond that fear to realize you do have the ability to say and perform in a way that you have already experienced and learned about how to do your role as well. If we don't, it can definitely impact our overall mental health, which can then impact our physical health, and even maybe other relationships and things like that that come into play as well. So, as that thought of soloist and expert, can definitely see, especially again early in my career, how that fit in. But I've since grown from that as well, which is the whole point of that in this conversation. What about you, Greg? What have you had any
I,
thoughts?
Yep. No, I think both of you nailed it. There's a way in which at different times we had different variations of the various types, and that it's constantly shifting. I think that, what I love about this topic is that there's a way in which I've been made most familiar with the concept of imposter syndrome in sort of your professional life or your career, but that it's bigger than just that, right? That it can show up in the dynamics in your relationships with people and family dynamics and other sort of social contexts. So it's a rich subject, not Rich Holloway, but a rich subject. But
The
it's
natural
it's
genius, right?
but when I was younger, first starting out in the work that I do, the soloist was definitely a big part of how I saw myself. I think, collaboration though was not really hard for me. It's not hard for me now, but this
Hmm.
notion that asking for help is weakness was definitely something that has, impacted me more back then. And so as you evolve in your career, you get more experience, you're around more people. Those kinds of fears are lessened. But, when you're a parent, sometimes you ain't always sure about the decisions that you make and the impact of them until, the fruit is born many years later, right? So it's just an
Yeah.
interesting way of thinking about how we are our authentic selves and how we are able to bring our best selves to whatever situation we're in, whether it's family or other personal relationships or in work. And so, so yeah, I think at different times I've had different traits of all of these things we've mentioned, and it shifts all the time.
It does. Because I think at this point, I feel comfortable speaking for the three of us and saying that in terms of our career, the confidence is born out of experience. At this point, we are well seasoned in what we do. We have achieved levels of expertise and experience and reputations in our respective fields of work, so a lot of the feelings that a number of these different types aren't really manifesting in our work life like they may have when we were a lot younger. But to your point earlier, GK, they can definitely show up in other types of relationships and situations. There's always opportunities to unfortunately feel inadequate in certain settings, depending on,
Mm.
the full scope of everything that's involved in that. So I think that gets us to this next part of kind of recognizing the reality that it happens, validating whatever feelings you have, so that you can deal with them effectively. And just understand that you're not the only one feeling this way. And I know a lot of people, even as we talk through this topic, who happen to be listening to this podcast, we appreciate you for listening. You thought you were the only one that had these particular feelings, especially some of these, now that we've defined six of them. Definitely a lot of, and you said 70 to 80% of the people have
Mhm.
experienced this. So we're definitely
Yes.
talking to just about everybody at some point. So you're not the only one that was feeling this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. To give it just some thoughts on that as well, I'll share three separate kind of incidents along the way for me, especially again, this is all earlier. I don't have those same feelings or thoughts, but my first one was I used to have this dream that I'd never completed a class in college. And I had this thought that I'm not ready. But now, as we put a term to that imposter syndrome, I think that was what was coming through my dream was that I'm like, do I have enough of the information I need to be validated in what I'm trying to do as a physician? And I would say, well, John, you got to realize you got a degree, you graduated already, so you must have finished the class type deal, right?
Pretty safe
You
to
know what I'm
say.
saying? So why am I dreaming this? But that's what made me,
Yeah.
now understand that as we were going through this topic about, hey, I bet that's what that was
It's the
manifesting itself.
it's the expert
Right.
type manifesting. Hmm.
Type deal. And then another one would be, am I a good father? I think, Greg, you were starting to touch on that, as well as being a parent. And and I say that I didn't have the experience of having a father figure in my life. So becoming a father, I've had this struggle of, have I been a good father? Did I do the best that I could have done with my kids? And I think I have. I believe I have. I believe my kids, love me and respect me and hopefully admire me as well. So again, I believe that that has happened, but those are the way these thoughts start to come into play. And as a fraternity member, you sometimes are having feelings of, am I a good bruh? Am I doing what all needs to be done? You know, representing the fraternity, or is there something I'm missing or lacking as it relates to that? And therefore, is somebody going to see me as, what's this brother talking about type deal? He don't know nothing type deal, and things of that nature. But yet, our successes through that. I mean, I've been what we call boss list or president of our chapter. I've served in different roles. I'm currently our health and wellness initiative chair for our sixth district. So, I mean, the successes, the positions, the accolades, been a Mega Man of the Year 2 times and Superior Service Award. So it's all of those things that show and recognize that, yes, you are doing, and other people see that, because that's how you get those recognitions. It's not you bestowing it on yourself, it's others seeing that and bestowing it upon you and applauding you for your efforts. So just knowing that, hey, we all are going to experience things like that as well, and trying to validate, why is that going on, but they don't recognize that you are having those thoughts, and concerns as well. So being able to really bring that up, and having this topic today, I think is really timely as well.
Yeah, I think so. I guess I said earlier, I've seen various times in my life. I've been all of those things. I think soloist is probably the most accurate for me because I tend to be in my head a lot. But one of the things that I have found is, I've been doing this what I do now for, this is the third decade, which is unbelievable. But what I have found is that it's flattering, right? It's humbling. People ask me, well, how do you feel about this? How did you do that? Like, to have younger folks or people who aren't as experienced as I am getting my views as they express their own feelings of imposter syndrome has been sort of a interesting thing to me earlier in my career, and even it's true now. Like, most of the spaces I'm in, there's not a lot of black men in it, which is, interesting in itself. But I have often found that people of other background, doesn't matter if it's women, black women or Latinas, or even, other younger black men, explaining their feelings of imposter syndrome, and me being able to reflect, back to them that I experienced that as well. But what I had to learn to do was be more confident in myself. But really saying, at the end of the day, if you have nothing to offer meaningful to a conversation, right? Don't feel pressured to say anything, right? And,
Yes.
I think there's a cultural aspect to this where I think white men often are the least afraid to talk, or are often the ones to first talk, even when they aren't necessarily offering anything new or different. And so I think we often
S-
carry that
Say when they
that
shouldn't.
with us.
Say
Yes,
when.
like
Right.
it's like, maybe y'all should talk a little bit less, right? And I found that to be a common thing. People are just like, I just got to say the perfect thing. No, you don't. Sometimes if you have nothing to say that is meaningful or valuable to you, or what you think is valuable to the conversation, it's okay not to say anything at all. And so just being in the place now where people are asking my views about
And
how
it
to
shortens the
navigate things.
meetings, frankly.
Or in the meetings, exactly. Exactly.
Right.
It moves
Exactly.
things
Right.
along when there's not all of this extraneous blah, 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 blah.
Right. What do you think about how social media has impacted this now? Any thoughts on that?
Sure, I can tell you a million different things, but I'll just start here. Social media has quadrupled by a million times to a factor of a bazillion the insane level in which people view themselves, right? Physically,
Mm.
the way people feel they need to promote themselves. It's this created this false megaverse of I'm doing incredible things, I'm living an incredible life, I'm doing so much all the time, and you really should be living the life that I'm living because your own life sucks in comparison. That's what social media has done, and it's created so much negativity because how are you going to compete? Right. And so, I mean, it has elevated imposter syndrome in so many ways, especially for young people who are already struggling to figure out who they are, where they fit in all of this, in this ever changing world. I'm glad that we just had to deal with regular technology coming up. We were already adults. It's kind of like drug use, right? Drug use impacts young people worse than adults, right? Because their brains are fully formed as adults. And so the damage is different. It's greater to kids when they get all messed up. So let's just, I mean, we see it all the time, right? Things that we never had to consider 20 years ago. Think from a public health perspective, the kinds of things that they're researching now, right? We never had to even consider, but they are looking at both the physical damage that we're seeing to young people from these devices being in their hands 24/7 and them bent down looking at them, to the psychological and emotional damage that we're seeing from young people trying to deal with these unrealistic expectations they're being bombarded with in social media, in these 8-second snippets, these 30-second videos, these all the different reels and all the different things that is so. And then when you add AI into it now even more, and the
Peace.
more realistic looking stuff, it's just going to make it more challenging, I think, to help people know how to sort their feelings about what are legitimate quote unquote inadequacies versus what's manufactured.
Hmm.
And these young people who've never had the opportunity to do and build confidence through activities, because they don't do stuff anymore. They sit there and they're wedded to these devices. They're not even engaging in the social or the physical activity in many respects like we did, which can create opportunities to build confidence.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
looking for the likes and things of that nature. And there are actually some
That
studies that,
dopamine, that dopamine.
right,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
exactly. There's some studies that have shown, especially for Black students, how they're experiencing going back to that racialized imposter syndrome because they feel like,
Yeah.
am I in college? Am I in med school just because of my color? Of course, in the society that we're living in currently, there's a big focus on that now, and that's causing our folks, our Black folks, our young Black folks to question, are they in the position that they're in because of their color versus their aptitude to be there type deal.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to
Bombardment.
recognize that, right, with all of
Bombardment.
that that's going on.
Yep.
And as a result, it can impact our mental health, brothers. It can, cause feelings of anxiety and depression and even low self esteem. There have been some questions about, is low self esteem similar to imposter syndrome? Well, we'll say this, that imposter syndrome is probably a component of low self esteem, but not vice versa to that. Low self esteem is much broader in what that means and how that impacts people. Whereas again, imposter syndrome tends to be more specific to your school, your job, your relationship, not necessarily how that fits in as a whole as well.
I
Hmm.
got you. That's
I,
just
I was
instead of it
joking.
that broad coverage. I'm sorry. Go ahead, GK.
No, no, I was halfway joking about the dopamine fix, and but not really. I mean, that dopamine fix that we get from accolades and from validation is a driver of so many different things, right? And I just, when you aren't getting it, right, there's a way in which it has the opposite effect. And so, I think that instant gratification or that need for acknowledgement or gratification, I think feeds into this notion of imposter syndrome. And I think makes people dig into it just a little bit more than they might otherwise not. And so I just think, those of us, we we lead institutions, whether it's a family or organizations or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We ought to be always challenging, people in those units to think about what kind of spaces we are creating for people and allowing them to be their authentic selves, and doesn't always look the same, right? And make sure that we're encouraging people to do that. And it just feels like we're in a moment in which people feel like they have to do what other people need them to do. And I think we're most successful when people can just be themselves and
Right.
bring their own unique set of experiences and perspectives to whatever the situation is, just to make it more complete and great for everybody.
Totally agree.
Hmm. So let's jump over to, we've talked about, the different types. We've talked about our own individual, I guess, relationships and experiences with it. Let's talk about how we get past it, how we overcome it, how we've done it, how others have done it. Let's focus on some of those tools and strategies that we can impart to our listeners to help them deal with it, whether it be in a work setting or other relationships, etc.
Yeah, I think one of the things we know to try to overcome the feeling of imposter syndrome is, we got to acknowledge one that we are feeling that way as well. And by acknowledging it, we then need to make sure that we focus on the facts. The facts are you're in your position for a reason. You have the knowledge, you have the experience, you have the ability to connect what needs to be connected for you to be in that position, or else you would not be in that position. Take time to celebrate those achievements and stop trying to figure out, oh, what could I have done better or what did I miss and things of that nature. Just enjoy that. Hey, we accomplished this goal. For you, Rich, it might be we graduated another class. For you, Greg, it might be we finally got them to agree to these working environments that are going to help benefit our people type deal. For me, it's a matter of just making sure that we are taking care of individuals, as best that we can as well. And practice self compassion. Know that, hey, you're doing the best that you can do. Okay. You're a worthy, you're validated, you're important, and you are getting it done as well. Have a network around you. It's important. You guys are my networks. You guys, I know if I'm ever feeling, down or a certain way, I just have to reach out to you guys and my other crew and things of that nature. And man, what an uplift there. My family.
Yep. Because I'm gonna
Uh,
tell you to suck that up.
right. And that's real and that's good. And that's what we sometimes
or
need to
some
hear
or
that.
some crude joke.
Right,
Uh,
right, right, right. Exactly. Exactly. But that's what we need. If you're one who likes to journal, then keep a journal. Write down. Well, we know the power of writing down how you're feeling allows you now to release that in a way that it should no longer be absorbing you as much as it was without you being able to let that go. Make thank you notes, awards, things of that nature that can really be helpful as well. So those are just some things that I thought of that can be helpful.
yeah,
Yeah,
well, along those same lines, two words to me come to mind. Oh, Take Six song, spread love. There's a way in which spreading love to others, it is contagious.
Mm,
It actually feels good to
mhm,
encourage other people and like give them some positive feedback, and like there's something therapeutic about it for me personally, just being
mhm,
kind and thoughtful towards someone else. And so encouraging people is another big element to me that
mhm,
helps us all. And of course, it goes with having a crew around or not, or just some
mhm.
even random people. Being nice, as my grandfather used to say, it's nice to be nice.
Yeah.
And it does have this multiplier effect.
yeah, it definitely does. I was thinking about what you were saying, John, about the journaling thing, and I just had a technological hack for that. For those of us, this excludes you, John. For those of us with iPhones, the
Yeah, exactly.
You inferior folks. That's
Mr.
okay.
Green,
But go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Right.
Mr. Green guy.
right. The one jacking up our messages, right?
Right.
Everything would be blue. But no, there's a journal app built into the iPhone. So it's a real convenient thing. Mindset, it pops up. It has recommendations like, for based on the things that I did or experienced over that day, you might want to write about this or talk about that. That also speaks to how much they invade our privacy, right? But that's a whole nother conversation.
You're
Yeah.
right.
But Apple
Is
does
that
it.
is that voice and written capabilities, Rich?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Um,
good.
but but what you were talking about, John, focusing on the facts, challenging negative self-talk, I think is something that people have to, I talk about it a lot, the importance of how you say to yourself what you say to yourself about yourself, right?
Hmm.
It's important to speak to yourself properly about yourself, right? You're not perfect. We all make mistakes, but beating yourself up tends to only cause damage, right? It never does anything positive. It's really important to use affirmations to speak positively about yourself and reframe those negative things. Of course, we're all going to feel unsure in different settings, right? New situations, new learning opportunities, new interactions with new people. There's all kinds of new. Right. But, you might not have done this before, but you've done other things before and you've had successes before when you've done something new. And so there's all kinds of experiences you can draw on and places where you can pull for confidence, in new situations. So reflect on your different accomplishments. So, this notion of reflecting on your own data, your personal data, looking back through your personal history, your accomplishments, the results, all of those things change the mindset. I can remember a situation when I was a young lawyer and it was me against, I'm representing the plaintiff, so it's usually just one lawyer versus a gang of lawyers on the other side, right? There'll be 8 defense attorneys in the room. Most of them don't have anything to do. They just stand there. But, they try to intimidate like numbers are going to do something. And so, I had to rely in this situation where this one lawyer tried to intimidate me. He tried to punk me in front of the judge. And so when the judge left the room, I had to remind him that, A, we had the law on our side, and B, I was a whole lot bigger than him. And if he ever did something like that again, when I saw him on the street, I was going to beat his ass. I said it just like that.
Completely off the record.
Uh, right, right,
Well, the
right,
judge, the judge had left the room to give us a
No, that's
chance
what I
to,
thought. That's what I.
yeah, to talk.
right.
And so I ended up, we ended up being successful. But the physical, the confidence that I've had from being in physically intimidating situations made me feel a lot more comfortable because I knew we were right. But you're not gonna try and punk me in front of this judge either. So, it's being able to draw on those past experiences to bolster your confidence when you're
Yeah.
dealing with your own feelings of inadequacy. Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta take some risks, right? And hopefully you're being calculated in them. But sometimes you just have to push beyond your own comfort zone and just take a chance. And I have found once you start taking that chance, it becomes easier to do, the next times. The
Yeah.
nervousness, the self-consciousness, to me, those are just signs that we're human beings and we actually care about the way in which we're going to present ourselves or the way that we show up. And that's okay, right? And just, sometimes it just requires an extra push to ourselves and to move beyond that comfort zone. Sometimes it's physical, Holloway. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's mental.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more work on something than we really want to do. So it just, pushing
Yeah.
ourselves beyond that comfort
Hmm.
zone to me is critical.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we have to be compassionate with ourselves, and you said it before, Rich, that, or I think Greg may have said that we have to keep ourselves in a positive energy. If we keep ourselves in a negative energy, it's just going to continue to foster that same negative aspects of thoughts and feelings about things. So speak positive about yourself. Know that you are there for a reason. Know that you've accomplished things because of all that you've experienced and learned throughout the way as well. And sometimes we may need outside help for that.
Mhm.
So, it's okay to seek therapy. Therapy is part of your wellness. So, in our community, we'll say in the Black community, sometimes seeking help is looked upon as being weak or, what's wrong with you type deal. But I want us to definitely let our listeners know that that's not the case. By seeking help shows strength. It shows that you want to be better, but recognizing that you are only you as well, and that sometimes we need that outside assistance to help us get to a better place too. So, if need be, ask people around whom they see. You can also check different websites, especially like the National Medical Association, if you're looking for a minority reference in different fields of study. The local or state health departments or licensing organizations can also be of some benefit for you as well. But seek therapy if it's just not able to move forward.
Mhm.
Have your peers, have your circle around you that you again can have those open and transparent conversations with, because they're the ones that are going to also be able to help keep you uplifted through those times of feeling like you're just not adequate, or am I really where I need to be in this position and everything. So we
Mhm.
encourage that as well.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna just
Yeah.
I'm gonna take you back real quick one step and say, think about how you might define success. Think about redefining it and not focusing so much on these notions of perfection, and instead
Mhm.
focus on progress. And when focusing on it, meaning celebrating the baby steps. No, not. And when I say celebrating the baby steps, I don't mean that when your child is graduating from kindergarten that you should go rent a limo and throw a party. No,
Why
no.
not?
Those are basic expectations. All right. Yeah. Celebrate it. All right. Good job. But don't be out there renting no limo and throwing no parties for that. Say that
Or if
stuff.
nothing else, don't put pressure on yourself to do it, right?
Right.
Right,
Right.
exactly. Right. Let's reduce anxiety and improve self-esteem by accepting that all progress is good progress, and every
Right.
small step forward is still a good thing. And so
Right.
if we can string together several small steps moving forward, now we've got something bigger to celebrate, because and so it's this notion of just let's take progress over perfection. Let's continually focus on getting a little better, doing a little bit more, keeping moving forward in that same direction, but not focusing on we've got to do it all. It's got to be incredible. No, it's just baby steps, and we keep getting a little better each day.
One of the sort of underlying themes of imposter syndrome that we haven't sort of said explicitly, but I hear it all the time, particularly from folks who are sort of high achievers or like really ambitious people. And it's this notion that I don't want to look or sound stupid.
Mm.
Right. That is such a driver of
Yes.
imposter
Mm-hmm.
syndrome to me. It's like you don't want to look or sound stupid. That's it, and it's like a straitjacket that folks put on themselves. And I just try to encourage myself and encourage others. Again, it's going to require a little bit of courage. It's going to require a little bit of practice, but get in the habit of moving beyond this notion of you just got to say the right thing at the right time. Like this somehow it's intrinsically like within you to say it, right? But take
It
the
sounds
chance and
like you're
maybe
saying. It sounds like you're saying be comfortable with saying something stupid every now and then.
Mm.
exactly, or being wrong, right?
Right.
Hmm.
Or
Right.
being
Yeah.
or failing, right?
Yep.
Yep, all those things.
And I think
Hmm.
we got to put it out there too that we recognize that for us, the folks of color, Black
Yep.
folks, that's even magnified even more
Yes.
type
Yep.
Yeah.
deal. So
Yep.
we have
Yeah.
to
Yep.
be able to be wrong, be okay, just take it as another opportunity for us to learn and grow from it, right? So
Hmm.
just because you made a mistake, or in your mind you made a mistake, for others they might have seen that as an accomplishment. So
Yeah.
take it
Don't tell
all
on
as an
yourself.
opportunity. Right, exactly. Don't tell on yourself and things. Just keep it going and think and say that was part of how it's supposed to have been said or done. Type deal.
Get your Steve Urkel on.
And
I
then
meant
let
to
them
do
think
that.
about it. Right. Let them think about it and be like, let me
Or
think on that one. Exactly.
Part of the genius of being black really is this ability to improvise. And I think, it sort of bumps up against this notion of you got to say the right thing and be perfect. But, the great musicians of our time, the great athletes of our time, they were great, not because of some perfect way of doing it, it's because they improvised or like they decided, I'm gonna do it this way. I think Miles Davis says something about there's no wrong note, right? It's
Yes,
the
he did.
notes you play
Hmm.
Yes.
next. It's the notes you play
Yes.
next, or something along
Yes.
those lines, right?
Yes.
And so
Hmm.
that's part of I would argue our genius. So, but that requires you to be afraid. I mean, don't be afraid to make some mistakes.
Right.
Yep. Learn from failure, right? Everybody always talks about the quote unquote successful people always talk
Hmm.
about how much they learned from their failures, how important failing was, you know.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And
Michael
there
Jordan has said that
yeah.
as well. He
Yep,
had to
he got
fail in
cut
order to
from high school
succeed.
team.
Right.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got cut too, didn't I? I didn't become a superstar, so I ain't mind that. No, I was just
You are a
that's it.
superstar, my brother. You just in a
It
different
wasn't. It
form and
wasn't. It
format.
wasn't
That's
my mis-
all.
It wasn't my mistake. Wasn't nothing for me to learn. It was their
So there,
mistake.
that's the natural
That's
genius part coming
that's
out
the
now.
natural
There you
genius,
go.
right? That is it.
Yeah.
All
So
right,
yes.
Greg.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Go ahead, Rich.
No, I was just going to say this whole thing, this notion of embracing imperfection, this acceptance of the reality of who and what we are as imperfect beings, right? Who are going to make mistakes from time to time. And, don't let that hinder your forward progress. Don't let that prevent you from being bold and taking those steps, taking those risks, as Greg mentioned earlier.
Yep. Well, this has been hopefully an enlightening conversation for our audience. I certainly enjoyed it. I just think when we think of imposter syndrome, it really is a thing that exists. And, people are studying it now. 70, 80% of the population at some point experiencing it. Is you can't get more real than that. And suggests to me that you're not alone and you're not the only one feeling that way. I think what we have said here is that knowing your type helps you spot the traps. Progress and support and compassion can quiet our inner critic. And so, we want to make sure that we are all doing what we can to support each other and making sure that what type yourself you might be able to relate to and what helps you push through it. And then we want and to invite our listeners to encourage the sharing of their stories or reflections or strategies with others, either through our own system here or even if you decide to do it in your own private or personal life. And so I think this is a good conversation and a good place to end the topic. But we'll be coming back in a couple of weeks with our next conversation. And we're so happy that our listeners are joined in and look forward to many more conversations in the future. And we really, really, really enjoy your feedback, your comments or
Yeah.
questions. And you can do it on social media or you can do it via email or you can call. Some of y'all know us, call or text us. But that feedback for us is critically important.
Yeah, especially now you can hear Greg the whole way through. He's got a new mic, everybody.
I
He
got
sounds good, doesn't
thank
he?
you, Rich, for the
Yeah.
mic.
He
The
sounds
natural
great.
genius did it again.
Yes, sir. He sounds good, doesn't he?
Outstanding, bros. Outstanding.
Thank you, brother. It's always good.
Thank you, folks.